Welcome to our fourth and final webinar for the 2016-2017 academic year at Midway University. This webinar is going to be on organizing content for greater retention using two Moodle tools, the book module and the lesson activity. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I'm going to start with a cartoon. And this is my cartoon to kind of demonstrate what I mean by the need for organization, better organization for retention. This fella says, "You think my desk is bad? You should see my Moodle course." We all know what it's like trying to organize content into Moodle. You have a bunch of information. You want to make your Moodle course contain the same information that your face-to-face course would. And there's a lot of information in your face-to-face course, and trying to translate all of what you would do in a classroom when you can interact synchronously with people into the asynchronous communication mode of Moodle can lead to there being a lot of stuff in your Moodle course. And I think that's especially true when you're trying to take your 16-week face-to-face class and cram it into one of our 8-week Moodle courses. So our Moodle courses tend to look like this fella's desk. And I'm going to show you an example of what I mean by that. And I'm going to be making fun of my very own course, so I'm allowed to make fun of it. It's my work. I'm going to show you my Spanish 125 course, the way it was organized before I discovered the book module in Moodle. I'm just going to show you topic 1. Here is a screenshot of topic 1. There's a whole lot of information there. You might think, well, that's not too bad. It may be a little overwhelming for students. You think that's all that's in that topic, right? Yeah, no way. It keeps on scrolling. In addition to everything that you saw in the first little screenshot there, there's also 2 recorded videos, a lesson that the students have to listen to. So you think, surely that's all, right? Nope. Keep right on scrolling. There's still more. All of those video links and an activity, an assignment activity where they can submit something, and a discussion forum. By the time they scrolled through all of that, and that was just topic 1, imagine what it was like by the time all 8 topics were in there. My students were about ready to take away the add an activity or resource button from me permanently. They were feeling just a little bit buried. When you have what we in instructional technology here laughingly call the scroll of death in your Moodle course, it really can be overwhelming and kind of burying for the students. So the thing is, I still have to get all of that information that I would use in my face-to-face course into my Moodle course. I need to present a large amount of material in a linear fashion. In other words, each step of what I am presenting builds upon the last step. I need to present it in a manner, in my case for a Spanish course, that requires the students to proceed in a certain order. In a Spanish course, students can't jump from A to R to B to D to G. They need to proceed in order, A, B, C, D, in order to understand things. And I need to go from the scroll of death to small enough chunks that the information is manageable and not overwhelming. What is chunking? Chunking in instructional design is a strategy for breaking up content into shorter, bite-sized pieces that are more manageable and therefore easier to remember. The solution for me was the Moodle book. The Moodle book provides a navigable, multi-page, potentially multimedia web resource within a Moodle course site. This is my entire topic 1. All 3 of those screenshots that you saw previously condensed into just this after I put everything into this little book right there. So let's look at what that book looks like on the inside. What happens when a student clicks this link? This is what the student would see. First, over here on the left, they have a nice, easily navigable table of contents. All of those different pieces of information in my previous scroll of death are broken up into these nice chunks or chapters. Then they have the first chunk of information, the first chapter of the book right here. And if they don't want to navigate through the table of contents, they have arrows for easy page turning on every page. The Moodle book can be, the Moodle books or their individual chapters can be printed if a student wants to print them, or if you as the faculty member want a written copy of your work. And if you already have a website that you would like to turn into a Moodle book, if you save the website as HTML files in a zipped file, then each one of those HTML files can be imported into the book, and each HTML file will be an individual chapter. So if you already have a website, you don't have to go to the trouble of copying and pasting it. You can just import it. Okay, let's go ahead and break out of the PowerPoint for a second and look at what this looks like in Moodle so you can actually see it live. This is my sandbox in Moodle, and I have created a test book for you to look at, and I'm going to show it to you in the same way that a student would see it. In order to do that, I'm going to scroll down to my administration block, and I'm going to go to the Switch Role To drop down, and I'm going to choose Student. And when I do that, I can look up here at my name, and I can see that my role is student. And that means I'm going to see exactly what my students see when they look at this book. So how does the book work? I just click on it, and it opens up. And again, you can see this table of contents over here. You can see the first chapter of the book, and you can see the arrows for navigating. So the student would read this chunk of information. This particular book is on how to write a literature review for your classes. So the first chapter defines what a literature review is. To go on to the next chapter, I can either click here and see the different types of literature reviews, or to go on to the next chapter, I could click here on the arrow. And when I do that, I can see that the next chapter in this particular sample book is an invitation to participate in a forum. So in other words, the students have read what is a literature review and what are the types of literature reviews. And so now they're being asked to go to this forum by clicking on that link and answer the question to write a discussion post to describe which type of literature review is best suited to your research project. So they would add a new discussion topic to answer that question, and then they could go back over to the book and either use the arrows or the table of contents to continue navigating through the book. So that's how the book actually looks to students. It breaks stuff up into chunks so that it's a little less overwhelming and a little more memorable to students. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to my normal role by scrolling down to the administration block again and choosing Return to my normal role, so that I can go back to my sandbox and show you how a book is created. First, like for everything else in Moodle, I have to turn editing on. And once I have editing turned on, I scroll to the topic where I want to add my book. And like always, I click Add an Activity or Resource. And when I do that, my Add an Activity or Resource dialog box pops up. A book is a resource. So I have to scroll down here to the resources section, and I choose book, and I click add. Once I do that, I get to the same page that I normally see when I'm adding an activity. So I have to give a name to my book. I'll call this one Test During Webinar. If I want to, I can put a description here to describe what the student should expect to see in the book. And if I want that description to show up on the homepage of my Moodle course, I would check this button. Under Appearance, there are a couple of things that I can configure for a book. Under Chapter Formatting, I can choose Numbers, which is default, which puts up the table of contents with numbers and the chapter titles. Or the chapter titles can be followed by bullets, or they can be indented. Usually, I either choose none or I choose numbers. The other thing that I can configure here is the style of navigation. I can choose table of contents only. If I do that, then those little navigation arrows will not be present. The only way to navigate will be through the table of contents. Or I can choose images, which is the default. That's what gives me those little arrow images for switching pages. Or I can choose text. If I choose text, then that's going to give me a link that says next instead of a little arrow. Personally, I think most people are familiar with those images, the little arrows. They know what that means. So I usually leave that way. That's pretty much all that I can configure for the general editing page of a book. So I just go ahead and click Save and Display. After I click Save and Display, I get taken to the first chapter of the book. And I have to enter a title. Wow, I can't type tonight. And my content. I made that typo intentionally. You'll see why in a second. And then I click Save Changes. Once I click Save Changes, I have my table of contents show up. If I made a mistake, like this one right here, to edit an existing chapter, I click on the gear. And that takes me back to that text editor, and I can fix my mistake and put a period at the end so that I have a sentence. Notice that this is like any other text editor in Moodle. You can format your text. You can make it a different color. You can put bullets in there or numbers. You can add links. You can add pictures. You can add videos. And you can add a file. So if you don't want to type in your content, you can add a file if you've already got it in a file, or if your content is a picture or a video, you can include those. Once I'm satisfied with my changes, I click Save Changes again. Now this is the part where people usually get stuck. This is the only tricky part to a book. They've got their first chapter in, and then they say to themselves, where the heck do I click here to add another chapter? To add another chapter, you just click on this plus symbol. When you click on that plus symbol, then you have another chapter. You can enter your second chapter title. And your content. And click Save Changes. And once you've done that, your second chapter shows up over here. And you'll notice you get one more icon in your set of icon controls. These arrows will allow you to move your chapters around. If you decide you don't like your order and you want to put one chapter in front of another, you can just use these arrows to move them up and down. If you decide you don't like a chapter, you can either delete it altogether, or you can hide it by using the eye, by clicking on the eye. You might do that if, for example, you've decided you don't have time to cover all the chapters that you put in your book this semester for some reason. You could just hide some of the chapters rather than taking them all together out. So that is how you add chapters and content into your book. There's one more trick that I want to show you about creating a book. And that would be if you wanted to put in a forum activity or a quiz activity into your book. There's no built-in way in the book to add a forum as a chapter or to add a quiz as a chapter. What you have to do is create your forum or your quiz outside of the book and then link to it inside of the book. So I'm going to show you the way that we recommend that you do that. And to show you, I'm going to go back to the main page of my Sandbox, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. And you'll see at the bottom of my Sandbox, I have a hidden activity or a hidden topic that I have named Hidden Area for Book and Grading Activities. And I named it that to remind me that it's hidden. And you can tell that it's hidden because it's gray instead of black like this one. The way that I created this hidden topic is at the very bottom, at the end of all your topics, you will see these two icons right here. If you click on the plus, that will create a new topic in your course. So you can always create new topics whenever you want to. The way I hid the topic is, you see how this one that isn't hidden has the eye? If I click on that, the eye will have a strike through like this one does, and the topic lettering will be gray. That means that the topic is hidden. Now, you may think to yourself, why is she making such a big deal out of hiding this topic? The reason that we want to hide the topic is because we want the students to do the activities in the book where we're going to link them in a minute. If they could see them just lying around in the Moodle course like these are, then they might think, oh wait, there's more for me to do, even though they already did it in the book. So we want to hide them so the students don't see them and get confused by them. Okay? So what am I going to do here? I've got my hidden topic, and just like always, I'm going to click Add an Activity or Resource. In this case, I'll add a forum to my book. So I just click Forum, and I click Add, and I'll give my forum a name. And do whatever other type of formatting that I normally want to do for a forum. And when I'm done, I click Save and Return to Course. Now, here's my forum right here in my hidden topic. See how it's more gray than this is? That means that it is a hidden activity in a hidden topic. I need the activity to be visible, but the topic to be hidden. That means the students won't be able to see the activity, but they will be able to do it. So I'm going to click on Edit, and I'm going to click on Show. Now see how these are both blue? That's how I want them to be. That means that they're hidden, but they're accessible for the student. Now that I have my forum created, I need to get a link to it. So to do that, I'm just going to click on it and open it as if I were going to make a post into it. And I'm going to go up here to the address bar, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to copy the URL of this forum. Now that I have that URL copied, I'm going to go back to my Sandbox, and I'm going to go back into my book, and I'm going to add a new chapter by clicking on the plus, and I'm going to call this chapter Forum Discussion. And I'm going to put instructions in. Please contribute to the forum. And then I'm going to highlight the word forum or any part of my instructions that I want. And I'm going to go to my link, and I'm going to paste the link that I just got from the forum and click Create Link. And now this is a clickable link. When I link to a forum or a quiz inside a book, I always add these instructions. If you don't want to lose your place in this book, right-click on the link above and choose Open in a new tab. That way, students know that when they come to this page in the book, they can right-click on this link, choose Open in a new tab, go to the forum, answer the forum question, and then go back to their same place in the book. So those are the basics of creating a book in Moodle. What if I wanted to incorporate more formative assessments into my lesson than I think the book module would be practical for? By formative assessments, obviously, I mean things like discussion forums and quizzes and so forth. As I just showed you, we can put those things into the book module, but it's not native to the module. You have to put that link in, and the students have to go out to the forum and then come back to the book. And if you want to do that a lot, the book module probably isn't the most practical resource. Or what if I want to chunk my content, but my lesson isn't linear? What if I want my lesson to look something more like this? Like maybe a role-playing activity where the students have to explore what it would be like to be the architect for a museum show, or the curator for a museum show, or the person in charge of the budget for a museum show, or the cataloger for a museum show. So they would choose one of these options, and depending on what they chose, they would take a different path through the lesson. And then they could go back and choose another and go through a different path for that one. So in other words, what if you wanted to make a lesson with a variety of paths or options in it? What if you wanted to create case studies, simulations, scenarios, or self-directed study units where students can jump from here to there? If that's the case, the lesson activity is for you. The lesson activity allows you to create linear content pages if you want to, or it allows you to create a variety of paths or options that the learner can take. You can include natively different types of formative assessments inside a lesson activity, and depending on the student's answer, they might go to the next page, or they might be taken back to a previous page to allow them to review the material that they got wrong, or maybe they're taken down an entirely different path. And the lesson activity can be graded into the recorded into the gradebook, or it can just be for practice only with no grades put into the gradebook. So let's look at the lesson activity in Moodle. And to do that, first of all, I'll just take you to look at a sample lesson. And again, I'm going to switch over to the student role so that you can see it exactly the way a student would see it. And here is what a sample lesson looks like. This is just a linear one. If a student has already seen part of the lesson, as I did when I reviewed this before the webinar, it will tell them, you've already seen part of this lesson. Do you want to start at your last page? And they can say yes or no, depending on whether they want to start again or just go to wherever they left off. So the lesson activity automatically bookmarks things for the students. That's really nice. But I am going to say no so that you guys can see it from the beginning. Okay, again, just like in the book, I get a nice little table of contents, this time called a lesson menu over here, with navigable, clickable links. And in this case, my lesson starts out with an anticipatory question. Again, this is about literature reviews. So the question should say, have you ever written a literature review? For what class? Tell me briefly about your experience. And the student can put their answer in. No, I have not. And submit it. And then they're taken to the next part of the lesson. What is a literature review? They read that, and then they have a button that says the next lesson is going to be about types of literature reviews. So they click on that. So we get presented with a quiz, and in this case, it's a multiple choice quiz. Which of the following is not a purpose of a literature review? To answer the research question. Well, actually, let me answer it wrong. To reveal gaps that exist in the literature. If I answer that, it will tell me your answer is wrong. Would you like to try again, or do you just want to go on? You can let them try again, or you can force them to try again until they get it right. I'll say, yes, I'd like to try again. To answer the research question, submit. And so then that takes me on to the next part of the lesson. And you can see that you can have the student get a running total of the number of points they've earned, and also they can get this little status bar, how much more of the lesson they've got to do, which kind of gives them hope that they're getting towards the end. Sometimes that's a nice thing to do. Okay, I'm going to go back to my normal role and show you how you would create a lesson activity. First of all, I have to turn editing on again, since I had switched to student role, and that turns it off for me. I'm going to go to the topic where I want to create the lesson, and I click Add an Activity or Resource. A lesson is in the Activities section. Here it is. I click on that, and I click Add, and that takes me to the general editing page of the lesson, where I give it a name. And a description if I want to. And I click here if I want that description to show up on the home page of my course. Now, for a lesson, there really is quite a bit that you want to configure in advance. But once you do it, it's over with. And if you just want to click Save and Display and start making your lesson and then come back to these configuration settings later, of course you can do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and show them to you now since I'm here. Under Appearance, you can choose whether the students are going to see the little green progress bar that I showed you on the bottom. By default, the answer is no, but you can change it to yes if you want to. You can also choose to, whether the students are going to see an ongoing score. By default, it's no, but you can choose yes. If you're not going to be putting grades in the grade book, probably no is the best answer. But if you are, maybe you want to change that to yes. You can choose to display the menu. What that means is the table of contents that was over on the left-hand side, all those navigable links, If you leave this as no, then that will not display. Let's see, the next important one here is the maximum number of answers. The maximum number of answers has to do with that example that I showed you here, where the students could choose different answers, and depending on what they chose, they'd go down different paths. Like in this instance, since the maximum number of answers that they might be able to choose is 4, 4 would be enough to put here. But you see, you can put as many as 20. So your lessons can have as many as 20 paths. It's up to you. Under default feedback, you can either choose yes or no. That means that if the students answer a question wrong, they'll get that default, that's the wrong answer statement. Or if they answer it correctly, they'll get the default, that's the correct answer statement. Those are the important things to configure under appearance. Availability is just like availability in any other activity. You can set those available and time limits if you want to. That's just the same as anything. Flow control is something else that is unique to the lesson activity. Under flow control, you can choose whether a student is going to be allowed to review the lesson. In other words, if they're going to be able to go through it more than once. You can choose whether the student is going to be able to try their questions, their answers, more than once. And if they are, what's the maximum number of times that they can try to get the right answer? What happens after they get the right answer? Normally that's the default, follow the lesson path is fine. Those are the important things under flow control. Grade is another important configurable area that is unique to the lesson activity. This part is the same. You can score by points with the maximum number of points. You can choose your grade category. But here is where you would choose whether this lesson activity is for practice or for a grade. If you say yes for practice, then that means the points will not go into the grade book. If you say no, that means the points the students earn will show up as a grade in the grade book. Custom scoring. If you say yes to custom scoring, which is the default, that means that you will be able to set a certain number of points per question. If you say no, then each question is worth an equal number of points. Here is where you decide whether students are allowed to attempt each question over again, yes or no, or if they only get one chance. And if you do set this to yes, you have to decide how to handle retakes. So in other words, if a student answers a 10-point question the first time through and gets 5 points, and then they take another shot at it and they get 10 points, you have to decide whether the student is going to get 10 points or if they're going to get the average of that. What would that be? 7.5. So you can use the maximum or you can use the mean, the average. Okay. So those are the types of things that you would want to configure. The rest of these drop downs, the same as for most activities, we recommend that you don't fool around with those. Once you're done with that, you go to Save and Display. If you don't like the way you set any of those later on, remember you can always edit them. Now, once you have clicked Save and Display, you are confronted with this mysterious screen. I'm just going to show you how to add a content page and how to add a question page in tonight's webinar. If you want to, you can import questions. And if you want to, you can add a cluster. For now, I'll just show you the content and the question page. So first, let's add a content page. To add one, I just click on Add a Content Page. I put in a title, and I put my page contents here. Whatever I put here will show up in that little lesson table of contents. Whatever I put here will show up as the content page, or like in the book, the chapter of the book. Now I need to decide what the students get to click on to proceed through the lesson. That's what I do right here under Content 1. I'm going to call this Proceed to Page 2. Whatever you type here is what's going to show up on the button that they click on to go on. Whatever you pick here is what will happen when they click on that button. So I want them to go to the next page, so I'm going to choose Jump to the Next Page. And I'm going to click Save. Once I do that, that's going to take me on to an even more mysterious page. I can see my label for my first page, Part 1. I can see my contents here. I can see what the button at the bottom of the page is going to say, and I can see what it's going to do. If I've done something wrong, I can click this gear, fix whatever I did, or add more to it, and click Save again, and I get taken to this mysterious page again. Now, what do I do if I want to add more pages? You'll notice now I have these links above the page that I added and below the page that I added. So I can either add a new content page above my original page, or I can add a content page below my original page. So I'm going to go ahead and add another content page, and I'll call it Part 2 and say more content here, and proceed to the next page, and jump to the next page and save. And so now I can see that I have page 1 still, its content, its button, what its button will do, the next page, its content, what its button says, and what its button will do. So let me show you how I would add a quiz question. To add a quiz question, I choose Add a Question page here. When I click on that, I have a choice of adding all the different types of questions that I could if I had a quiz. So if I wanted students to do something that was discussion-like, I could add an essay question. If I want them to do matching, multiple choice, true and false, short answer, whatever, I'm going to go ahead and add a multiple choice. So I choose multiple choice and I click Add a Question. I put in my question title, Quiz 1, and I put my question here, what is the third planet in our solar system? Okay. And then I put my answers here. This looks like a regular quiz in Moodle. I can put my first answer here, Earth, and the answer that is the correct answer should have a score of 1. And then I can put in my distractors. Mercury is the wrong answer, so it has a score of 0. Venus is the wrong answer, so it has a score of 0. Mars is the wrong answer, so it has a score of 0. And I click Save Page. And I can see in my little lesson outline my first page, my second page, and now my quiz. And all my quiz answers and what they're going to do. Notice that for the one that has the right answer, the jump sends you to the next page. But for the ones that have the wrong answer, by default, it just keeps kicking them back to that page and making them try again. You can change that. You can change it to jump to the next page if you don't want to give them another chance. Okay, so once I have built some stuff, how can I preview it to see how it's going to look? I can preview one individual page by clicking on this magnifying glass. That will show me the one individual page. Or I can go up here to the Preview tab and preview the whole thing. So here is my page 1, my button that says Proceed to page 2. Here is my page 2, my content, my button that says Proceed to the next page. Here's my little quiz. I'll choose the wrong answer, and it just kicks me back there. So I'll choose the right answer, and it lets me get to the end of the lesson because that's all that's in there, and it tells me, congratulations, I got to the end of the lesson. If I want to add more, I just go back to my Edit tab, and I can continue either using the gear to edit individual pages or using these links to insert a page of either content or questions wherever I want it. So these lesson activities are a great way to chunk your material and add formative assessments to make it active learning. Okie dokie. Then I am going to go ahead and end the recording and go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you guys so much for attending. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like any help, if any of these gave you any ideas and you'd like any help with them, you can feel free to contact me or just contact the center.